The League of Women Voters, Metro North Chamber of Commerce, and the NorthMetro Suburban Optimist welcomes you to this forum to meet the candidates running for Blaine City Council Ward 3. Thanks to the candidates, Blaine City Hall, and Metro North TV for making this event possible. This year, the League of Women Voters is holding all of our forums without an audience, which is very different for us, but we want to avoid COVID-19 spread. I'm Jerry Nelson, co-chair of the League of Women Voters Voter Service Committee, and I live in Champlin, so I can't vote for either of you guys. The candidates for Ward 3 Blaine Council are Andy Garvais and Chris Masolia. Masolia. Is that pretty good?
Masolia.
Yeah. We will begin with 3 questions, which were provided to the candidates in advance. This will be followed by questions from our website that were submitted by voters. Candidates will alternate who answers each question, and the answers are limited to 1 minute. So the first 3 questions are just kind of to get to know you. And Andy Garvais, describe your background in community involvement.
Well, thank you, Jerry. So I live in northeastern Blaine with my 2 beautiful children, Amelia, who's almost 10 months, and Vinny, who's 4 years old. And my better half, Elma, who works in higher education at the University of Minnesota. I've worked for the Minnesota Department of Veterans Affairs for almost a decade, where I currently serve as the Director of Veterans Programs and Memorial Affairs. In that role, I oversee 3 different divisions. Our State Benefits Division, which has all of our state-funded programs for veterans, of which we're currently administrating $6.2 million in COVID assistance for veterans and their families who've been affected by the financial downfall related to COVID-19. Our homeless veterans programs were our initiative to end veteran homelessness across Minnesota, and our Memorial Affairs Division. I've served in the military for over 18 years on 2 deployments to Iraq and Afghanistan, and my most recent position was a Minnesota Emergency Preparedness Liaison Officer coordinating with the state of Minnesota and the DoD for catastrophic response to the state.
Thank you. Chris Masolia, describe your background in community involvement.
Yeah, hi. Thanks so much, Jerry. Thanks so much to the League of Women Voters for having me. Really appreciate this opportunity. Also just want to take a minute and thank everybody who voted for me in the primary so that I could be here. Thank you so much. I really appreciate the support. My name is Chris Masolia. I'm 28 years old. I've lived in Blaine for 10 years. I actually grew up in North Minneapolis, and then I moved to Blaine to serve at my church in the youth program. So I've lived in Blaine, like I said, for 10 years. Just got married 2 years ago. My wife, Shauna, I have a 5-month-old. We love it here in Blaine. We live over behind Blaine High School, and we really do love the community. I also work as a digital marketer. I do data analysis and web development for a company down in Eagan called Thomson Reuters. And then I also have what I call my side gig business doing web development and SEO for local businesses here in Blaine. So I work with landscapers, roofers, plumbers, all that kind of stuff. And so I've been involved in the business community here as well.
Thank you. Chris Masolia, what are your qualifications for serving as Blaine City Council member, and why are you seeking this office?
Well, I graduated high school when I was 13 years old, so I was an accelerated learner. I've attended over 7 different colleges and universities. I studied a variety of topics, but I come from the private sector. So I'm not a government employee, but I'm a young person, and as I've been out engaging with residents, that's something that people have really resonated with, just to bring somebody with a new perspective, fresh perspective. I think young people being involved in their city is really important, especially for the future of Blaine and where we want to go. I'm also a really a bold person. I'm not afraid to stand up and speak out and ask some of the tough questions. Even as I was looking over, the budget recently, I want to ask some of the questions like, why are we running a deficit on our refuse fund, on our garbage contract with Walters, on our sewer fund, our storm drainage utility fund, facility maintenance fund? All these funds we're running a deficit on. Why? We've increased the tax base a lot, and I want to ask some of those questions.
Thank you. Andy Garvais, what are your qualifications for serving as Blaine City Council member, And why are you seeking this office?
First, I want to briefly highlight the demands of the position. This position, you're part of a team that manages a budget of over $30 million, and we have over 300 employees in the city of Blaine. It's not an entry-level job like Chris has stated before, and I think that we should expect our candidates to have the knowledge, skills, and experiences in order to carry out that position, and I have that experience. I've served in this position and served the residents of Blaine for the last 4 years. I understand what we do well and areas that we need to improve upon, and over the last 4 years, we have improved. I want to continue to deliver positive results and see through some of the longer-term changes that we've started to get the ball rolling on. One of the first things I asked for when I took office was to develop 5- and 10-year capital improvement plans so that we know what we have and when it needs to be replaced. While I deal with a lot of complexity at the state level in my position and role at Veteran Services, I bring a lot of that expertise and apply it at the city level to deal with the complex problems we have. And I have a master's degree in public administration, which I think has proved invaluable when looking at our budget and looking at fiscal responsibility, of which in 2019 we received a AAA bond rating.
Thank you. Andy Garvais, what are your short and long-term goals for Blaine?
So that's a great question, and I'll tell you that I think anyone who decided to run for office in 2020, their short-term goals have probably changed drastically. Because of COVID-19, we have a large financial deficit, and we're going to continue to see that within 2021. It's not just property taxes and permit revenues in Blaine that are being shorted. It's the MSA dollars, which are funded by the gas tax collections on a state level. People are driving less, or they're working from home, and so those MSA dollars that we get to help with our road repairs and projects in Blaine are going to be shorted, and we need to figure out how we're going to adjust to that. So looking at some of the short-term goals, I want to prevent local businesses from going out of business, which we've implemented a couple different programs and measures to do that, continue to recruit new businesses, and adopt a 2021 budget that considers the economic hardship that some of our residents and small businesses are facing while balancing the needs of the city to continue to expand and maintain in certain areas like public safety.
Thank you. Chris,
It's okay. It's
Masolia.
Masolia. I told her earlier you got to say it with an Italian accent.
Yeah. What are your short and long-term goals for Blaine?
Yeah, thanks so much. So I'm running to keep Blaine safe and affordable. I want to make sure that we don't implement a citywide sales tax. I think that would actually really hurt small business and the small business community. It's come up at a few different workshops, and I really want to make sure that we don't implement a citywide sales tax. I want to support our great police department and increase the number of allocated officers to bring us up closer to the state average for officer to citizen ratio. I also want to see a new fire station built in Northeast Blaine. We can increase our response time there up to 60%. And so I really want to prioritize public health, public safety going forward. I want to advocate for transparency and accountability in our budget and really watch what we're spending. Like I said, there's all those funds that are running a deficit, and I'd like to take a look at it. I want us to have clean water, and I want the dirty water to go out. I think we've had a lot of water issues here in Blaine, and I'd really like to see that be addressed. Long term, I want to continue to push for creative, unique. Okay, that's all good. You can go on my website to see long term.
You'll probably get a chance to talk about that in the rest of the questions.
Cool, thanks.
Okay, this next voter says, quote, I see a lot of non-compliance with the recommendations for slowing the spread of COVID-19 in Blaine. How would you encourage Blaine residents to help each other stay healthy? Chris Masolia.
Yeah, thanks so much for whoever asked that question. I would encourage residents to just be smart and stay healthy. You know, if you're sick, stay home. Listen to your doctor. CDC guidelines. You know, I think all of us need to do our part to make sure that we're watching out for people. You know, obviously with COVID-19, people in long-term care facilities and those with pre-existing health conditions are really at risk, and we really need to watch out for them and do our best to make sure that we're keeping everybody here in Blaine safe. You know, I don't think that the city should implement anything beyond state regulations or guidelines. I think that We have to follow what the state and the federal government is telling us, but I don't think that the city should implement any additional regulations.
Thank you. Andy Garvais, how would you encourage Blaine residents to help each other stay healthy in this COVID-19 crisis?
Well, I think we've done that. I think overall our residents and our businesses have been very proactive in not only following CDC, but the Minnesota Department of Health guidelines and regulations. I'm a true believer in that our businesses in Blaine take the appropriate measures and steps. You saw a lot of Blaine businesses implementing mask policies before the governor statewide mask mandate. There was never a discussion on the council of us even entertaining a citywide mask mandate because all of our business owners were taking the appropriate measures and keeping not only our residents and their customers safe, but their workforce. Inherently, our businesses want the workforce to remain safe. So I think it's important we just encourage everyone to continue to be safe out there and adhere to the regulations. And I wouldn't be a fan of going to a beach and posting a video encouraging people to attend a beach that's closed.
Thank you. Let's move on to a business question here. Andy Garvais, if elected, what would you do to provide a healthy business climate? And a related question, please describe any experiences you have had owning or managing a business, as well as specific advocacy efforts on behalf of the local small business community.
Oh, great question. And I think right now that's the toughest predicament we face right now is not only creating a climate that still invites small businesses into our community, but one that keeps and maintains the ones that we have. We've seen a handful of businesses in Blaine closed due to the COVID-19 restrictions and the financial impacts. They just haven't been able to make it work. And so we've done a lot of different measures for restaurants with our outdoor dining policies and no fees on tents. We've received federal CARES Act dollars that we've worked really hard with our partners to get that money out to our small businesses to keep them going. And another thing we're doing is still actively recruiting businesses. Blaine is still a community that businesses want to grow in, and so we have to show them that we're continuing to do that. And as far as experience managing a business, I have experience recently managing a new startup that's going to involve a housing in Baxter, Minnesota.
Thank you. Chris Masolia, if elected, what would you do to provide a healthy business climate? And please describe any experiences you have owning or managing a business, as well as specific advocacy efforts on behalf of the local business community.
Sure, thanks. I just real quick want to address what Andy said. I kind of took a shot at me there, man. I didn't go to the beach and post a video encouraging people to go. I went there and just recorded the fact that there was like 200 people there after the city council had said that it was closed. And so I was just kind of pointing out the fact that, the beach was closed and there's a ton of people there. So, but yeah.
You said
as far
more
as
than that, but yes.
Yeah, so I wasn't encouraging people to go that it was closed. But so as far as the business community, I think no citywide sales tax is huge for the small business community. I don't think business owners want to have a citywide sales tax. I also think that would drive business away from Blaine. Coon Rapids doesn't have a citywide sales tax. Ham Lake doesn't have a citywide sales tax. So I think that making sure we don't have a citywide sales tax is really huge for the small business community.
Thank you. Okay, this next question is long, and you can have 2 minutes if you need to, because there are several pieces here.
Okay.
This voter says, I see a lot of diversity in my neighborhood, but not in city government. So that's one question. The Census Bureau estimates that Blaine is about 20% diverse at this time, and that number is expected to grow. Research shows that economic growth improves with greater racial inclusion and smaller racial income gaps. Considering recent events, how would you address racism in Blaine and make all citizens feel included and valued? And what are your thoughts on how the city can address barriers to racial equity in Blaine? And first is Chris.
All right, a 3-in-1 question. So first of all, I would just encourage anybody that wants to run for city council. I mean, I think that it's great that we have Richard Paul run and get in. Nobody ran against him 2 years ago. But I would encourage anybody who wants to run for city government. I think that's the great thing about America is that anybody can run for office at any time and win the trust of the residents and the people. As far as addressing racism, I would totally, be the first person to speak out boldly and strongly against any types of injustices or racism that happens in Blaine. I've lived here in Blaine for 10 years, even as I've been out, talking to the residents and a lot of people of color, a lot of my neighbors. Nobody's has said that they've experienced, great forms of racism at all here in Blaine. Specifically with the police, one of the things I'm running on is, increasing our police force. I've talked to a lot of, people of color that said, yeah, we haven't had any issues with racism when it comes to our police or police brutality or, racial profiling. So I think Blaine has done a really great job for people of all ethnic backgrounds. I don't think that we're a city that's struck with racial inequities. I think it's great that Blaine is a growing, diverse ethnic community. I think when you look at it, we have a Buddhist temple here in Blaine. We have mosques here in Blaine. We have Muslim schools. We have Christian schools. We have a growing Muslim community here. And I think that Blaine has done a really great job for people of all ethnic backgrounds.
Thank you. Andy Garvais. The voter sees a lot of diversity in my neighborhood, but not in city government. The Census Bureau estimates that Blaine is about 20% diverse at this time, and the number is expected to grow. Research shows that economic growth improves with greater racial inclusion and smaller racial income gaps. Considering the recent events, how would you address racism in Blaine and make all citizens feel included and valued? What are your thoughts about how the city can address barriers to racial equity in Blaine?
Great question, and thanks to whoever had submitted it. I think in the last couple of months or this year in totality, you look at the racial inequality, and I think it's just our country has our eyes have opened up to a lot of different things, and I think we are also more divided at the same time than we've ever had been before. As far as racial inequity and diversity and inclusion on our local government, I have advocated strongly while I've been on the city council for ensuring that we have turnover in our local commissions. For the longest time, if you served on a commission, you had a voice in local government, and if you had a seat, you kept that seat, and it didn't turn over a lot. And so we've implemented term limits for people who serve on a commission so that we can get more new residents in to have a say in our government and have some input in our government process, because we do rely on our several commissions and committees to inform their decision-making process at the city council. So it's important to create those opportunities. Second, how would you address racism within the community? I think Chris is accurate in that our police department does an amazing job at ensuring that everyone feels like they have a voice. They have done a series recently where they take in questions from the community, and I praise our Chief Badani for doing an amazing job. Him and his team are second to none. And so they're really listening to the community, answering the questions that they have. And lastly, what I'd say as a leader, I think it's important not to paint people in broad strokes. You can support the police and support the BLM movement and recognize the good in both, and not have to be against one because you support the other.
Thank you. Next question, Andy Garvais, you'll start. In the past, when a major project is proposed, the citizens most impacted were not invited to a meeting to ascertain their opinions until the project was so far along. The meeting was really to tell people what would be done. How would you work to get citizen opinions early in the process?
So we've done, since I've been on the council, we've taken a lot of steps to change the notification process. We hold more community meetings and forums. Early on, we identify if a project is more volatile than another, and if it is, we will hold community meetings, and we post those meetings in the ABC newspapers, on our website, all of our social media feeds. We encourage people to follow that so they're aware. We've even gone so far as to post road signs, light up road signs out near projects, letting people know that these projects are coming and that there's a community meeting on a certain date to get their input. And so I think we've really made a lot of progress in ensuring that we have input before it hits a committee, while it's at a committee, before it hits the council, and while it's at the council, before we make a decision on moving a project forward.
Thank you. Chris Masolia, in the past, when a major project is proposed, the citizens most impacted were not invited to a meeting to ascertain their opinions until the project was so far along the meeting was ready really to tell the people what would be done. How would you work to get citizen opinions early in the process?
I think the biggest thing is really just having a pulse on the neighborhoods and the communities and really wanting to put residents before the city projects. I think that's the biggest thing is as a council member, I would really prioritize talking to people in the neighborhoods, whether that's on social media, apps like Nextdoor or Facebook, but also just going out and talking to people, knocking on doors, asking them, hey, what do you think about this project? What do you feel about this? And I do think that just as I've been out engaging with the community, there has been a lot of projects that people don't really feel like the city has been totally transparent with them as far as timelines and how things are going to move forward. I could bring up some examples, but there's not time for that. But I think the biggest thing is listening and really prioritizing residents over development and city projects.
Thank you. Chris Masolia, what would you do to deal with junk cars, boats, campers, etc., parked in the main roads and junk piled up in driveways and yards in the neighborhoods, especially on the old side of Blaine?
I think we have a city ordinance for stuff like that already. So I think that the city could probably just do a better job of enforcing some of their ordinances. I think that if people want to have junk cars, don't put it in the front yard. Hide it in your garage, put it in the backyard. Make sure your neighbors are okay with it. Use some common sense. I think that there is a lot of ordinances here at the city that aren't necessarily enforced all the time. And obviously it's up to all of us as citizens to be informed and to, try to do our best to comply with city ordinances. But I also think that Blaine could do a little bit better job of enforcing some of them, especially when they get complaints.
Thank you. Andy Garvais, what would you do to deal with junk cars, boats, campers, etc., parked in the main roads and junk piled up in driveways and yards in neighborhoods, especially on the old side of Blaine?
That's a great question. Thanks for asking, Jerry. So I think in the city of Blaine, we do have ordinances against that, and we have a code enforcement team that goes out and addresses those issues. And in my time on the council, we've really taken a strategic approach to this. And the first step was educating the public regarding our ordinances. And we spent quite a bit of time doing that because it's really hard to hold people accountable if they didn't know about the ordinance. And the second phase that we engaged in was monitoring, giving people warnings about their infractions. And now we've kind of entered this phase of really being strong and enforcing these code violations. And the problem with this code enforcement topic specifically is that often people will clean up or move the vehicles and come into compliance, and then as soon as they pass a check, they go right back to their old ways. And so it becomes really a tough issue to enforce the repeated infractions when you have a hard time building upon that history.
Thank you. Andy Garvais, what do you see as the greatest need or challenge for youth in Blaine? And how would you as an elected official help solve this issue?
Great question. So I think one of Blaine's biggest draws and assets is our recreation program and partnerships, not only with the programs that we have organically with the city of Blaine, but our partnership with the National Sports Center. And so I think we've done a lot of amazing things to expand on those and provide opportunities for our youth, and also in partnership with the National Sports Center and their programs like the summer rec program that they put on for our youth. When we look at future partnerships and what we really need to do with youth is I think we need to hone in on our mental health crisis that we're seeing amongst our schools. I think the number of suicides and related mental health issues we see in all three of our school districts is at a breaking point. And so last year we've worked a lot with the superintendents and the police department and their SROs to develop programs and measures to mitigate that and help our youth.
Thank you. Chris Masolia, what would you see as the greatest need or challenge for youth? And how would you as an elected official help solve the issue?
Yeah, I actually think, Andy, I think you hit the nail on the head with the mental health crisis. I think people don't really realize what's going on right now in Blaine as far as mental health. The level of suicide and depression is staggering. It's staggering. And, you know, it's a huge issue. It's not something that I think that the city's just going to be able to, you know, snap our fingers and fix. But, you know, I think that coming alongside of schools, after school programming, coming alongside sports, coaches, trying to help parents, doing more events for young people, and not just kids, but teenagers, trying to see as a city, how can we reach teens and young adults, not just the younger generation as far as, you know, children. So I think that there's a lot to be done, but I think mental health is by far the biggest thing that, you know, is facing our young people.
Thank you. This will be the last question before closing statements. Chris Masolia, how would you handle a disagreement with city staff?
Yeah, I think that it's really important to, you know, be equitable and talk freely and openly. Like I said earlier, I am a bold person, so I'm not afraid to say what I believe and really mean it. Obviously, I think that the city staff have a lot of expertise, and they are on the job 40 hours a week working hard for our city, and I just commend them for that, and I just want to thank everybody that works for the city of Blaine. But at the end of the day, we have to prioritize what residents want. That's our job. You know, taxpayers are paying tax dollars, and they're electing city council members to really push for what they want to see happen in their neighborhoods and in their city. You know, this is the people's city. It's not the employees' city. And so at the end of the day, we really need to prioritize residents over, you know, just what the city wants to do. But I think that there's always a way that we can work together to figure out what's best for everybody in Blaine and not just individual neighborhoods.
Thank you. Andy Garvais, how would you handle a disagreement with city staff?
That's a great question. I think, one, it's important to realize what an amazing staff we have. We have so many talented individuals who work for the city of Blaine, and they don't treat it like it's their city and not the residents. They know they work for the residents, and they work hard for our residents day in and day out. And we treat them right, and we pay them to do that well. So most of the disagreements that you see is just because of miscommunication. So a lot of times we'll work on really trying to hone in where the miscommunication is, where the data lapse is, and really figure out why we're not in agreement. When it comes to certain things, people need to understand that the city council's role is policy, and at the end of the day, we have the right and the final say in the policy and the vision and where Blaine looks, and we represent our residents, and I think the decisions we make have reflected that.
Thank you. Let's have your closing statement first, Andy Jarvis.
So I just want to thank everyone for taking the time out of their day to be informed voters and listen to the issues at hand. I want to say that I have the expertise to do this work, and I've demonstrated that over the past 4 years in all of the work that we've done. Blaine is a safe city. We've constantly added to our police department in the last 4 years. We've added over 10 sworn officers, and we'll continue to add that as the city grows, and we'll work with our chief of police and understand what he says our needs are, and as a council, we'll continue to implement that. I have well thought out plans and networks that can continue to help Blaine maintain smart growth and the low cost of government. I think it's important for people to know that everything you've seen in Blaine, the growth, we still have the lowest cost of government, and with comparative cities and many of the cities in Anoka County, and I think we're proud of that. And in 2019, you saw us receive a AAA bond rating. This is an amazing community. I love living here and supporting and working for you all. Thank you.
Thank you. Chris Masolia, your closing statement.
Thank you. Yeah, once again, thanks so much to the League of Women Voters for having this forum, and thanks for everybody watching. And I also want to just, again, thank everybody who supported me so that I could be here, and thanks for everybody who's going to be voting for me. I really appreciate it. In closing, I hope that you have gotten to see some of the differences. I guess we're not going to have a debate this year, but hopefully you've gotten to see a little bit of a picture. And I would say the biggest differences between Andy and I is, I really want to put the residents first. I don't want to just listen to city employees or, Chief Podani, who's a great guy, and obviously we got to listen to everything that he says, but we also need to prioritize, down the road, like everything going on in Minneapolis and, everything going on in our world today. We need to listen to our neighborhoods, our communities, and we really need to put residents over, new development and new growth that is hurting Blaine. I feel like our roads are overpopulated, we have water issues, and there's just a lot of things that we could be doing better, and I think that I would bring that new, fresh perspective.
Thank you. Thank you, candidates, for speaking to voters about the issues and for running for City Council in Ward 3. Thank you to all of you watching for your interest in becoming informed voters. You will find links to all the Meet the Candidates forums on our website, lwvabcmn.org. And we have lots of ways to vote this season. You can request an absentee ballot now on the Secretary of State's website, mnvotes.org, or go to Marianne Young Center at 9150 Central Avenue between September 18th and on October 30th between 8 in the morning and 4:30 in the afternoon to vote early. If you need to register to vote or update your registration, you can do that online on the Secretary of State's website or when you go to vote. Make your voice heard in this general election and by voting on or before November 3rd. Now, thank you so much and stay healthy and safe.